The bell above my bookstore's door chimed as my brother James strutted in, his designer suit a stark contrast to the cozy, well-worn atmosphere of Page and Pine books. He wrinkled his nose at the scent of old books and fresh coffee that permeated the air, looking thoroughly out of place among the floor-to-ceiling shelves. "Still playing shopkeeper, little sister?" he smirked, carefully avoiding contact with any of the overflowing stacks of books. "How quaint." I continued stamping price tags on a new shipment of vintage novels, not bothering to look up. "What brings you to my humble establishment, James?" Finally developing an interest in reading. He laughed, the sound echoing off the wooden shelves. "Hardly. Just thought I'd check on you, see how you're surviving with your, what did Dad call it? Your retirement hobby?" The way he said it made my blood boil, but I kept my expression neutral. Little did he know that Page and Pine Books was just the public face of Sterling Holdings, my real estate investment company that owned half the commercial properties in downtown, including the entire block his precious investment firm occupied. "We manage," I replied mildly, thinking of the stack of property acquisition documents waiting in my real office, the hidden room behind the rare book section. "Coffee. No time for your little barista experiments. I've got a merger to finalize. Speaking of which..." He paused, straightening his Italian silk tie. "I might need to expand my office space soon. The whole building, actually. Time to clear out some of these smaller businesses." I hid my smile behind a first edition Hemingway. James's firm occupied the top 3 floors of the Sterling building, my building, though he didn't know that. The same building whose mortgage was coming up for review next week. "Expanding again?" I asked, genuinely curious about how he planned to finance it. The market rumors about his firm's liquidity problems had been growing louder. "Thompson and Sterling Investment Group is going global," he announced grandly. "We're acquiring Pacific Partners next month. The deal's almost done, just waiting on some final paperwork from the banks." My phone buzzed discreetly, a message from Sarah, my chief financial officer. "Pacific Partners deal falling apart. Their due diligence revealed Thompson and Sterling's leverage issues. Meeting with their board in an hour." "Sounds impressive," I said, typing a quick acknowledgement. "Though commercial real estate is pretty volatile right now. The market's been unpredictable." James waved dismissively. "Leave the real estate analysis to the professionals, sis. Stick to what you know, paperbacks and pumpkin spice lattes." If he only knew that my little bookstore had generated the market analysis that made Pacific Partners hesitate. Or that Sterling Holdings had quietly acquired the majority of his firm's debt over the past year. "Speaking of real estate," he continued, "when are you going to sell this place? The building's prime location is wasted on a bookstore. I could help you get a good price." I thought about the offer I'd received just yesterday, developers wanting to turn the historic building into luxury condos. They'd been shocked to learn that the owner of the seemingly modest bookstore also owned the entire historic district. "I like it here," I said simply. "Books are good company." "Books don't make empires," he scoffed. "While you've been playing shop owner, I've built something real. Something that matters." My phone buzzed again. "Sarah, Pacific Partners officially terminated merger talks. Their CEO cited serious concerns about Thompson and Sterling's financial stability." "Right on schedule." James's phone rang, his face darkening as he answered. "What do you mean they pulled out? That's impossible. The deal was..." He walked toward the window, voice rising in panic. I quietly moved to my computer, pulling up the property management software that showed all my holdings. The Sterling Building's mortgage review was highlighted in red, due for reassessment in exactly 1 week. James ended his call, his face ashen. "Minor setback," he muttered, more to himself than to me. "Nothing we can't handle. The banks will understand. We just need to..." His phone rang again. This time I could hear the banker's voice clearly through the speaker. "Mr. Thompson, in light of recent developments, we need to schedule an emergency meeting about your building's mortgage situation." "What situation?" James demanded. "The mortgage isn't due for..." He paused, probably realizing he'd never actually read the terms of his office lease. "Who owns this building anyway?" I smiled, thinking of the documents hidden in my safe. The ones that proved I owned not just his building, but most of the commercial real estate his firm had been using as collateral for their increasingly desperate expansion attempts. You know, I said casually, arranging a display of leather-bound classics. Maybe it's time we had a real conversation about business, brother. About empires and what really makes them last. The next 48 hours transformed James's world from one of perceived power to desperate scrambling. I watched it unfold from my little bookstore, each development perfectly orchestrated like chapters in a well-written novel. First came the market rumors. By closing bell, Thompson & Sterling's stock had dropped 15% on news of the failed Pacific Partners merger. James's phone rang constantly, each call making him pace more frantically across my vintage Persian rug. No, listen, he practically shouted into his phone, we can restructure the debt. The building alone is worth. He paused, face paling further. What do you mean you need the landlord's approval? It's just a formality, right? Sarah appeared from the hidden office door disguised as a bookshelf, carrying a thick folder. The banks are all calling, she whispered. Should I begin phase 2? I nodded, watching James run his hands through his perfectly styled hair, destroying the effect he'd probably spent an hour creating this morning. Release the property assessments. By afternoon, financial news channels were running stories about Thompson & Sterling's collateral problems. Apparently, someone had leaked information about the true ownership of their office buildings, all held by various subsidiaries of Sterling Holdings. This is insane, James muttered, slumping into one of my reading nooks. Every property we've used as collateral, they're all owned by the same company. A company nobody's ever heard of. I carefully shelved a first edition of The Art of War. Sounds complicated. More coffee. I don't want coffee. He grabbed the cup anyway, spilling some on his $5,000 suit. I need to find this Sterling Holdings. Nobody knows anything about them. Their corporate structure is like a maze. Every lead ends at some bookstore or cafe or... He stopped suddenly, looking around my shop with new eyes, taking in the antique cash register that concealed a state-of-the-art trading terminal, the rare book section that hid my real office, the vintage card catalog that actually contained property deeds and acquisition documents. No, he whispered. It can't be. My phone buzzed. A message from his bank. Meeting in 30 minutes regarding Thompson & Sterling's credit situation. Will you be attending, Miss Sterling? I showed James the message, enjoying how his eyes widened in disbelief. Surprise, brother. Still think I'm just playing shopkeeper? You're Sterling Holdings? All this time. Did you ever wonder why Mom left me all her worthless properties instead of selling them like Dad suggested? I moved behind the counter, pressing a hidden button that revealed the modern office beyond. Or why I studied both literature and real estate law while you were bragging about your MBA? James followed me into the hidden office, his legs shaking slightly. The wall of screens showed his company's plummeting stock price, my property portfolio's value, and the web of shell companies I'd created to hide my empire. Mom knew what she was doing, I continued, taking my seat behind a desk worth more than his car. She taught me that real power isn't about showing off. It's about building something solid while everyone underestimates you. The merger, he said weakly, failed because I let Pacific Partners know about your leverage problems. Problems that exist because you've been using my buildings as collateral without understanding who really own them. Sarah entered with more reports. The banks are demanding immediate review of all Thompson & Sterling's loans. And the SEC is asking questions about their collateral declarations. James collapsed into a chair. We'll be ruined. Everything I've built. You mean everything you borrowed against my properties to build? I corrected him. Did you ever actually read your office lease? The terms of your mortgage? Or were you too busy mocking my little bookstore to pay attention to details? His phone buzzed again, probably another panicked investor or angry board member. He ignored it, staring at the empire I'd built while he'd been sneering at my retirement hobby. What do you want? He finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. I pulled out a folder containing documents I'd prepared weeks ago. Full audit of Thompson & Sterling. Complete restructuring of your debt. And your immediate resignation as CEO. Resignation? But the company is my life. The company, I said firmly, is a mess of over-leveraged assets and questionable accounting. Assets that mostly depend on properties I own. Properties whose leases are all coming up for review. The blood drained from his face as he finally understood his position. Every building his company operated from, every property they'd used as collateral, every piece of real estate they'd leveraged, all ultimately controlled by his bookstore-owning sister. But why? He asked. Why hide behind the bookstore? Why let me make a fool of myself all these years? I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city street where Mom used to walk with me, pointing out properties and teaching me about patience. Because Mom taught me that true success isn't about showing off your power. It's about building something real while others waste time bragging about their empires. The following weeks transformed Thompson and Sterling from a cautionary tale of corporate hubris into a case study of strategic restructuring. I watched from my command center, still hidden behind the bookstore's false wall, as James's carefully constructed facade crumbled into reality. The financial press had a field day. Bookstore owner revealed as real estate mogul. Thompson and Sterling's house of cards revealed. Sterling Holdings, the invisible empire. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from people who'd dismissed me for years. About that book club meeting I missed. Remember me from business school? Regarding your little shop. I deleted them all, focusing instead on the restructuring plan for Thompson and Sterling. James sat across from me, his designer suit wrinkled, his perfect hair disheveled, watching as I systematically dismantled and rebuilt his company. The board has accepted your resignation, Sarah reported, bringing in the latest documents. They're ready to implement the new management structure. James winced. My own board, they didn't even fight it. Because they've seen the numbers, I replied, signing another stack of papers. Your expansion strategy was built on shifting sand. You used my properties as collateral without proper documentation, made promises to investors you couldn't keep, and ignored basic risk management. I thought. He began. You thought showing off was the same as succeeding, I finished for him. That's why Mom left me the properties instead of you. She saw how you valued appearance over substance. My phone lit up with a message from Mom's old friend and mentor, now chair of the city's Historic Preservation Board. Your mother would be so proud. You built it exactly as she taught you, brick by brick in the shadows, with patience and wisdom. The restructuring took months. I maintained my daily routine, opening the bookstore, serving coffee, recommending novels to customers who had no idea they were talking to one of the city's largest property owners. The hidden office behind the shelves hummed with activity as we rebuilt Thompson and Sterling into something sustainable. James, stripped of his CEO title and corner office, spent his days learning the business from the ground up. I made him start in property management, dealing with tenant complaints and maintenance issues, things he'd ignored during his race to expand. The Anderson building's heating system needs replacement, he reported one morning, his once pristine suits replaced by more practical attire. The maintenance costs are higher than the reports showed. Because you never read the inspection reports, I reminded him. Too busy buying sports cars and hosting yacht parties to worry about infrastructure. He flushed but didn't argue. The past months had taught him humility, an expensive but necessary lesson. 1 year later, I hosted a different kind of meeting in my bookstore after hours. The shelves had been rearranged to accommodate a small gathering of the city's real business leaders, not the ones who made the society pages, but the ones who actually built things that lasted. Sterling Holdings and Thompson and Sterling are merging, I announced, watching James stand quietly in the corner, no longer the arrogant CEO, but someone finally learning the value of substance over show. But we're doing it right this time. Building something real. The merger announcement made headlines, but not for the reasons James would have once preferred. Sterling siblings unite. A lesson in sustainable growth. From bookstore to boardroom. The quiet revolution. Thompson and Sterling rebounds. A study in corporate rehabilitation. 5 years later, the bookstore still stands, though now everyone knows it's more than just a quaint shop. I kept it as our corporate headquarters, expanding into the adjacent buildings but maintaining its character. The hidden office became a museum of sorts, displaying Mom's original property deeds alongside the empire they spawned. James found his place eventually, heading our property management division. He learned to read the fine print, to value substance over appearance, to understand that true power doesn't need to announce itself. You know, he said one evening, helping me close the shop, I still don't understand why you kept the bookstore running all these years. We have an empire now. You don't need to sell coffee and paperbacks anymore. I showed him Mom's old leather-bound notebook, filled with property notes and business wisdom. Because this place reminds me of what matters. Every person who walks in here looking for a story reminds me that success isn't about who has the biggest office or the flashiest title. It's about building something real, he finished, finally understanding. Something that lasts. The bell above the door timed as the last customer left. Outside, the city skyline glittered, our buildings, our legacy, our empire built on books and patience and the wisdom of a mother who knew that true power grows best in quiet places. I still serve coffee sometimes, still recommend books, still maintain the cozy atmosphere that made so many underestimate me. Because in the end, success isn't measured by how many people know your name or how impressive your title sounds. It's measured by what you build when no one's watching. By the foundations you lay while others are busy showing off. By the empire you create while they're laughing at your little shop. And sometimes the sweetest victory isn't in proving them wrong. It's in teaching them to be right, even if that lesson comes with a side of humble pie and a fresh cup of coffee from a bookstore that's so much more than it appears.